You're listening to Incendium's podcast, E-Commerce Growth Leaders. In this episode, we chat with Eric Roaring, co-founder and chief financial officer of Fontana Candle Company. Fontana's candles have been featured on TV shows like Good Morning America and were recognized as the 72nd fastest growing private company in the Northeast by Inkern magazine. Please welcome our guest, Eric Roaring.
So Eric, tell me a little bit about your background and how you came to found your company.
Sure. Yeah, so I went to college, graduated with the double major in accounting and Spanish. I've wanted to be a CPA since I was probably in 6th grade because we had a couple of family friends who were CPAs and they both retired at 40. And so I said, well, that sounds like a career I should get into. Oh, yeah, why not? So went to school, graduated, got my CPA, was in corporate for a while doing corporate type accounting and attestation, and then got into a trading role. So I was an accountant for reconciling a trading P&L. I worked in the cocoa industry and worked very closely with the commodity traders for a larger cocoa manufacturer, and did an SAP implementation, so kind of became a super user of that, learned trading really well, and the commodity trader that was in that position decided to leave, and they decided to give me a shot for trading. So I traded futures, traded commodities and physicals for about 5 years, learned procurement really well, what a PO was, how to buy on terms, all that kind of stuff. Then went from that position to a little startup that a buddy of mine was doing in the beverage industry, went back to cocoa, did all the procurement, global procurement for the parent company of Godiva, then got into procurement for ceiling tiles, working at Armstrong. So it was very corporate for about 15 years. My wife and I got a candle for Christmas one year from a friend of ours back in 2017. We weren't huge candle buyers, but we received it as a gift, so we lit it up and started watching movies on a Friday night. And after about an hour, we both had splitting headaches, which is kind of unusual for us. And we were going through our day of kind of what we went through and what we did and didn't really understand where these headaches were coming from. And we realized that the only thing we really changed was we lit this candle. And so it was from a big brand, traditional candle, but we started doing some research on it and found out that we don't really know what's in this candle. It's got petroleum paraffin wax in it, and then it has fragrance in it. And we started doing some research about what is in those ingredients and found that there's almost over 3,000 ingredients that could be included in this fragrance alone of this candle. And we don't really know what they are. Come to find out, they can be quite toxic to you and your environment. And so doing that research, we're like, I can make a candle. I can make one better. And so I got some beeswax, I got some coconut oil, and I got some better for you fragrance oils, some more natural fragrance oils, and started playing. I went through 150 different blends because I didn't want something off the shelf that every candle maker was using, the soy wax or whatever. So started playing with blends, went through 150 different blends before I finalized the wax blend that we were using. And we started making candles. We went to a maker's market vending show and we sold about $800 worth our first time. And we were just awestruck that we could make $800 for something we were doing on a date night. And so gave some to friends, started selling them a little bit more in different makers markets and pop-up shows, and then really got into the e-commerce space. My wife is really into the marketing. She's our CMO and really started playing with the website, and we've grown every single year. Our smallest year was last year of growth, and we came in with a 56% growth rate from year over year. Yeah, so our best year was an 800% growth rate. So it really has grown out of a hobby to something that we now employ 15 people. We have a 6,500 square foot warehouse. We're actually looking for a bigger one across the street. That's 13,000 square feet. Looking at implementing some automation. And yeah, really just trying to keep on getting the message out of, if you're allergic to fragrance, or you're trying to, clean up your lifestyle a little bit, working on educating people of what's in candles and what you don't want in candles.
Yeah, how do you find that's going? Because my wife was the same. Until very recently, we had candles all over the place that were probably pretty terrible, and it's just something that we learned probably a year ago. That all of the we were on a bit of a health thing and realize that there's all these toxins in them, and okay, we've got to throw everything out, and then just buy, there's a small amount that you can find that are actually going to be good for you. How do you think the sort of trajectory of that awakening is going, and is that helping you guys?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting question, in that the education piece for us is a really big deal, because I always equate it to people who are eating a candy bar and eat candy bars every day, or highly processed foods, and then they eat an apple. That apple just doesn't taste right. It's because your palate and your tongue is so accustomed to such sugary items that when it eats something natural, it doesn't understand what it is. And so we find that same kind of thing happens with us, in that where people are used to a traditional candle that has fragrance and has dispersants and has phthalates in it that allow that scent to linger and fill a room, they switch to ours, which is a natural scented with essential oils only. And it's not as impactful. It doesn't fill a room. It doesn't linger for hours. It's just very minimal compared to that. And it's because your olfactory senses are so accustomed to being inundated by really heavy fragranced things that when you switch to natural, it's just not as impactful right away. And so as you spend more of your life in that natural state and the natural surroundings, the natural aroma of essential oils starts to grow, and you start to be able to pick those up more. And so we find it a very big educational piece for us, for people when they first make that transition and buy our candle for the first time. They're like, I can't smell anything. Well, it's in there. It's just that you're not accustomed to it.
How do you handle that in terms of, I guess maybe there's a content flow that you go through before and after sale?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. So we do a lot of front end marketing and education of it, of saying exactly that, of like, this candle will not perform like a traditional candle. It's not going to. So you have to let your senses clear. You have to let your olfactory senses, come down to a baseline again, natural baseline. And we are very upfront with it. And so that's kind of that big piece where it's either through our social media, it's through our website, through a podcast, whatever it is. It's that education piece and letting people know up front and firsthand that don't expect this to perform like a fragrance candle. And kind of like you said in your journey, I equate what fragrance is today to what organic was back in the 2000s. Well, in the early 2000s, people knew what organic was, had kind of heard of it, but they go into the grocery store and they see a bushel of strawberries for $5 more that are organic versus non-organic strawberries that look the exact same for $5 cheaper. Right, exactly. Where today, now everyone knows what organic is. Every single grocery store has an aisle for organic, and there's Whole Foods that touts being totally organic or natural or no synthetic ingredients, whatever. People know what it is. And I really think that's where fragrance is on its journey, where today people are becoming aware of the toxins that could be in fragrance and are looking for alternates. And I think that a lot of people are coming to that realization, and that market is growing.
Yeah. So you've been going for quite a few years now. How has your role changed over that time?
It's funny. I was thinking about that the other day, actually. And we've talked to a lot of people, especially candle makers, who really enjoy making candles. They like the art of it. They like that artistic release of making candles, and they enjoy it. The first thing I tell them is, if you enjoy making candles, don't start a business. Because I don't make candles anymore. I used to do all of our candle making. I used to do all of our product development. I used to do all of our quality. My wife and I did all of our shipping. We did everything, and we don't do any of that now. So now my role is really focused on the future and the strategy of the company. So where I spend my day now laying out a floor plan for a potential building that we're looking at getting. I'm looking at the requirements of an automation machine that we're looking at getting, looking at how long does it need to be? Will it fit in this space? How do I lay out the floor most efficiently? Where do I put people? How many people do I need? And it has really, really changed. So if you are interested in the art of making candles or whatever it is, the business, the side hustle that you're doing, and you like doing that, don't start a business. Because as soon as you hire someone, your HR, you have to do I close our books every single day. I pay sales tax in 16 different states, sometimes monthly, sometimes quarterly, sometimes yearly, tracking all of that. I do margin calculations per sale to make sure I understand, what does AOV mean to us? How do we look at our marketing spend? Because when we started, I think our first year we spent maybe $300 on advertising and marketing. Last year in 24, we spent $750,000 in advertising. Our budget next year is almost $3 million. So it's amazing how the business has shifted from the beginning as a hobby to, holy crap, we're actually a business now, it feels like. And it's just completely changed.
Was there anything early on in that journey that you feel could have derailed you, or any kind of early hiccups?
We have been very fortunate in that we've been profitable every single year. The reason we were profitable the first 4.5 years was because Katie and I, my wife and co-founder, we didn't take a dime out of the business. So we didn't get paychecks at all for the first 4.5 years. And when I say we made money, we made, $5,000. So if we had taken any kind of salary, we would have lost a ton of money. We haven't taken any long-term funding. We've done like Shopify capital loans. I think we've taken out about $650,000 in Shopify loans to pay for inventory. If anyone knows candles, you know how slow it is in May through August. And in July, August, you are buying a ton of raw materials to start building inventory for the fall. And it's very tight in cash. So in those early years, not taking a salary has allowed us to reinvest everything we've made back into the business and more or less been self-funded this whole time. And so if we did need to take a salary out of it, that would have really derailed us. We were very fortunate in that I had a good corporate job and was able to pay for all of our expenses. We were able to really invest in the business because we put in total about $75,000 of our own money to start. And so it was a very slow, methodical growth. And I really think that helped us grow and stick around.
You think that your background on the financial side really helped there?
Yeah, it's really cool. Katie and I butt heads a lot because we are two very different brains. She is that marketing brain, that artistic, gray area. It could be this, it could be that. And I'm not like that at all. I'm an accountant through and through. I like black and white. I like 1 + 1 = 2. And so we are very complementary in that aspect. I do close our books every single day, so I have a very good pulse of our revenues and expenses. I'm really good at procurement and making sure we don't run out of inventory. Really good at implementing processes and a vision of scaling. Our first batch we made in our basement, I think we made 3 candles. Yesterday, we made almost 3,500 candles. The way we did things in the beginning isn't anywhere close to where we're doing things today. And so her being able to grow the company and me being able to run the company has been very complementary. If it had just been her or just me, this company wouldn't have lasted 8 months.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
when did you both actually join the business full time? Then you said for 4 years you weren't taking a salary at all.
Yep. So we got our LLC in January of 2018. Katie had just closed her business. She ran a dog daycare grooming center and had just exited that. So Katie was pretty much full-time right from the beginning. And then I quit my corporate job, and my last day was May of 2021. So about 3.5 years before we were both full-time.
Yeah. Have you seen that really make an impact then?
Oh, it's been
in terms of the growth that you've been able to achieve since?
Huge, yeah. Because when I was still corporate in 2020, was our biggest growth year. When people locked down, people had a lot of extra money and an awareness of the health niche, and we had huge growth. I think we had 800% that year. And so it was really, really big for us. I was still working full time in corporate. And so I started corporate at about 4 a.m., would work till about 3 p.m., and then make candles from 3 until about 8. And it was nonstop. All weekend was dedicated to it. And I just couldn't do my job to the full potential because I was just trying to keep up. So there was no strategy. There was no outlook. There was no forward-looking budget. And it was just day to day. Versus now being full time, I can look at budget. I have a budget through 2031 now. Whether or not that's accurate, who knows? Anyone who knows how budgeting works, like, okay, pie in the sky. But I've got one, and I've got a direction and strategy and a thought of what the future looks like. And so that's been really, really helpful.
Yeah. So you'd say you're very data driven as an individual.
Yes, very data driven. I think we spend We spend about $15,000 a month on software, whether that's WMS, MRP, data analytics, apps, whatever. We are not shy of implementing software here.
Yeah. What are some of the key kind of metrics that you look at on the web and marketing side?
Yeah.
And the financing of that?
Sure. So when we started, we didn't start doing PPC until probably a year and a half ago. When we started, we were really big in the influencer marketing. So 2020, we had our first influencer do a campaign for us. I think it was $1,500 for her to do a story. And this was the beginning of 2020, before we were anything. We probably talked for a week about, do we spend $1,500? This is the most money we've spent ever on marketing. Is there any kind of return to this? Is this just going to be a nothing thing? And so we decided to do it. And we had $18,000 in sales that day from one post. I didn't know anything about advertising. I didn't know anything about influencers.
Yeah.
And so to see the sales are, it was crazy. We had more sales in that one day than we did our first year of business. And it was just nuts. And that was before
what was the reach of her account then?
She at that time had like 230,000 followers.
Okay. So quite
She has 1.2 million now. So, and a story of hers, I think, is about $6,000 now. So just as her reach has grown, her rates have just increased exponentially. However, because we were one of her first accounts or companies that she promoted, we still have a very good relationship with her, and she still posts our stuff basically for free, just for the commissions that we pay her.
Yeah, right.
So we really leveraged the influencer marketing big time, because that's when it was still, I won't say niche-y, but it wasn't as commercial as it is today, in that you can just tell the influencers that this is their job. Somebody sent them something, they paid for it. They're not really using it. They're just getting paid to promote it.
Yeah. How do you, because I had this conversation with someone recently, and they said that they're finding that the influencer side of things has really decreased in terms of effectiveness, and not just in terms of like the amount you have to pay versus what you get. And they're finding that actually there's a bit of a saturation with product promotion, and people aren't converting as much. They don't believe it's as authentic.
You're 100% right. Where in 2020, it was such bottom of the funnel, where it was like you put 1,500 in, you get 18,000 back. And that was pretty common in 2020, 2021. It was so bottom funnel, where today now it really feels like it's come up the funnel quite a bit. The effectiveness just isn't there. The ROI isn't there.
Would you say it's anything to do with the fact that over that time, I think the economy has arguably is nowhere near what it was also?
I think so. I also think you are seeing a more discerning or educated consumer base, in that you can tell when an influencer is talking about a product that they really use themselves, found themselves, were introduced to, whatever. But you can tell when they use it in their daily lives, the way they talk about it, the way they present it. You can see it in random shots versus an unboxing of a box that some company sent, and you just know they're being paid for it. And there's just a lack of authenticity today that comes across, versus in 2020, when it felt like it was more of an awareness campaign of, hey, all of my followers, I actually use this product. I actually consume this. Versus today, where you can just kind of tell it's a pay-to-play type of thing.
Yeah. Are you spending kind of less than you have previously on influencer stuff now, or is it just less as a percentage of overall?
It's less as a percentage. We also don't do a lot of upfront payments. So a lot of influencers are, pay me $3,000 for a story, and I'll give you the story. We don't really do that. We only pay based on commission. So we have said no and been said no to a lot of times by influencers who want just an upfront fee, where I think we use two different influencer tracking softwares, and we pay about $5,000 a month in commissions. I'll pay $1 million a month in commissions because they're sales. It's like having a sales force on your team that is out selling stuff for you. And so I have no problem paying any amount of money. I actually don't have a budgeted spend for influencers, because if that means it's up, that means our sales are up. And so we don't pay to play. We just do performance-based incentives to all of our influencers now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so aside from the influencers, is there anything that sticks out as being a particularly successful tactic to you or campaign?
From an influencer standpoint or just in general?
In general, aside from influencers.
Yeah. So I guess a little longer of a story is the influencer campaigns did so well when we started that in 22, 23, you really did start to see that ROI decrease or the ROAS decrease. And we were really trying to evaluate, okay, well, what do we do now that it feels like this isn't converting as well? We're spending more money on this and just not seeing the return. So we went down the SEO route. We hired a firm to work on our SEO. We started doing blogs for SEO searches and rankings, and that helped. But as everyone knows, SEO is a longer term play. So I was like, okay, well, now what do we do? So that's when we started getting into PPC. We started playing with it. I think we started on Google first. Didn't really know what we were doing. Then went to Facebook, meta advertising, kind of the same thing. Didn't really know what we were doing. And the problem that I found with it was that unlike influencer marketing, that where they have a code or they have a link and we have software to track it, I know exactly what my return is. When we went into Google and Meta, we had no idea. It was like, well, how much money did I get from this $1,000? We were so new to it of like, well, what did we get out of this? And so we stopped doing it because we didn't understand. So then we hired a PPC firm that manages all of our meta ads. They manage all of our Google ads. They create the content. They do AI with it. So it's always A/B testing. We have like 150 different ads that they're running and always testing. And we found a software that will corroborate all of our spend and tell us what our ROAS is. Because like we talked about earlier, you have the GA4, you've got meta analytics, and they're all over the place. The fear with it.
Agreement, consistency, or, I mean, you can't trust them essentially, can you? They're marking their own homework.
And that was exactly what we were like. You look at meta and it was like, oh, you have a 7 ROAS today. Well, I didn't even have a 7 ROAS in total sales, so yeah. I couldn't have. But like you said, there's such bias there that of course they're going to inflate it because they want you to spend more. And so that was one of those reasons, like, well, okay, I don't really trust this. I don't really know what we're doing. And so that's when we did go out and find someone that monitors PPC. We found a software that tells us exactly what our ROAS is on a day, across all platforms, across all spends, and everything like that. And then it was, okay, now we're comfortable understanding what our return is. We understand, should we put more money in? Should we take some money out? Should we reduce our budgets? All that other stuff. And that was our biggest learning when we went to PPC. Coming off of influencers where it was so granular and I could get an exact number of returns on our spend, going to PPC, it was a black hole. I had no idea what we were getting. So it was like, I can't evaluate the spend. I can't evaluate if this is a good way to market. When we got that software that helped us understand where our money was going, what it's bringing back, it's like, okay, now let's go. So we have $1.5 million budgeted for PPC next year because we're far more comfortable in understanding what kind of return we're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that spend then, you've got quite a large product range.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you manage that in terms of the Google campaigns? Are you using product feeds, DSA, those sorts of campaigns?
So we are, I can't even answer that educationally because as we've gotten into it, I got to that learning stage of like incompetent competence, I think they call it, or something like that. It's like, I know how daunting this is and I don't have time to learn it. It's always changing. The algorithms are always changing. And one day we have an 8 ROAS, the next day we have a 1. It is so mind blowing. So we do have an agency now. They monitor all of it. They do, I think they said they do like 1,000 data points a second in analytics or something ridiculous. But they're using that AI to do constant A/B testing. And that was one of the parts is like, okay, when we started with them, I think our budget was like $1,000 a month in PPC. And they're like, well, that's fine, but we can't use our AI software enough to get enough data points to really justify and learn, because there isn't enough people interacting with it. So the more you spend, the more data points we have, the better refinement we can do of these ads. And so as we continue to increase our ad spend, we see really big fluctuations in ROAS. Because okay, you put $5,000 on and it all goes to warmer traffic, that ROAS is going to be really big. Versus when you put 10,000 on and you start going to some colder traffic, well, then your ROAS tanks. And so that's where that constant monitoring, we look every day at our ROAS for the previous day. We are very fluid in our budget. We will change it probably every 5 days, depending on what the previous 5 days had done.
Yeah. And do you bring kind of LTV and payback periods into that campaign analysis too?
Yes, very much so. And that's where learning this marketing thing, top of funnel, bottom of funnel, what kind of traffic where people are coming from, where the traffic's coming from. We really do look at ROAS from a PPC standpoint, in that, I try to make PPC self-funded, in that if I put 5,000 in and I get a ROAS of 2, all right, it kind of paid for itself, so I'm fine putting another 5,000 in. If we get a ROAS of 1, okay, then do we need to curtail it down a little bit? Otherwise, it's another initial investment into that marketing piece. And so really paying attention to that is important. But like you said, I'm learning the LTV side. So where we look at our customer and it says, okay, yeah, this guy came in and it would cost us $6 for this click and this sale. Looking at it long term, he's going to order 3 times. So now that LTV really starts to justify our lower ROAS, in that we have good faith in our product, in that it's a quality product, and that we have a returning customer rate of about 34 to 36%. And so it really helps break down that ROAS and justify accepting a lower ROAS, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's things aren't getting less competitive. Every niche in e-com is just getting more and more competitive. Meta's not as good as it was at delivering. So I think people are having to understand that longer term investment picture much more in order to actually make progress and grow. If you don't have the data and the tools to do that, you're just looking at the kind of two-dimensional, we didn't make our money back today, we have to stop spending. And it becomes reactive and very kind of off on, and you can't build a business like that.
You're right. It's still something that we are really learning, because the ROAS is such an easy thing to understand now with the technologies out there of monitoring where traffic's coming from, that it is very easy to have knee-jerk reactions to them. And that's something we're still learning, in that, okay, fine, we had a ROAS of 2 today. We got 10 new customers. So we're assuming that 3 or 4 of those are going to come back and spend another $150 over the life of their ordering with us. And so that 2 ROAS is fine looking at it holistically, but that's really hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. Looking ahead sort of 6 to 12 months, what are some of the key priorities for you for growing? I know you mentioned you've got a much increased budget. I guess a lot of it will come down to how that's...
Yes. So we are an e-com business. About 91% of our business is through our website. The remaining is wholesale and Amazon. And what we're really trying to do is diversify our sales channels. We have another consulting group with us on working on retail-ready products. We had to go out. They got an audit of our products from 30 different people who are buyers in the space, understood kind of what they were looking for, what they liked in the product, what they didn't like in the product, narrowing down our offering to more retail so that they aren't blinded by indecision of so many products on our website. So really focusing on the retail growth of our business is something that we are doing. But what we're trying to do is leverage our website, our social media, all that other stuff, because we're trying to do a front door and back door approach to retail, in that a front door of knocking on the door, hey, we're Fontana, this is what we do, but also back door in that we're trying to get celebrity endorsements. We're trying to have a big brand presence where people are knocking on the doors for us and saying, hey, you guys need Fontana in here, I want Fontana. And so working on PR, working on the PPC, working on brand awareness holistically, as well as those front door aspects of knocking on doors and saying, hey, we're Fontana, will you carry us? And so growing our retail side of the business is really big for us. Growing Amazon is really big for us. So we do FBA right now, FBM right now. We're looking at going FBA, getting the Prime badge, working on increasing the algorithm on Amazon so we pop up higher. And then huge growth in our D2C through the website with increased PPC spend.
Yeah. Awesome. Exciting times.
Yes, it's very exciting. It's very stressful, but it is the fun part, having gone from just Katie and I making candles to a team of 15 now, where I don't have to make candles and I can actually do this side of the business. So it's really cool.
So you wouldn't put yourself in one of those in the bucket of the guy that wants to make the product then?
No, I enjoy making candles. I like the science of candles, the complicatedness of candles. I like strategy and building much more.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs in the space?
It will get very hard, and it will get more difficult before it gets easier. So we are in our 7th year now, and it has just kind of started this year feeling like I can focus on the business, not focus in the business. So we've got a general manager now. I just hired a product development QA receiving person. And that's taken a lot off of my plate and has allowed me to focus on the business, on strategy, on where we're going in the future. So for anyone who's looking to start, I would say do it. It's the most rewarding thing in the world. I won't lie in that when we started this business and we're like, oh, this could be a business, let's get rich, to we have 15 people here now that they use this as their income. This business needs to be here. It's not it went from a shift of I want to get rich to I want to hire people. I want to pay people real wages. I want to be meaningful to people and have a legacy. We don't have children. We don't plan on having children. So this is what we're doing. And it's super rewarding. It is really hard though. We work 100 hours a week. I'm up at 3 working on computer stuff, and I'll work till probably 4 or 5 every night. Work on every weekend, and it is all you think about. To grow something from a hobby to a business, it's all consuming. And it gets so much harder before it gets easier. My first PO I bought, like substantial PO, was I spent $100 on wooden wicks, and that was a ton of money. Last year, I spent over $150,000 on wicks. So it's just magnified every single year. And it gets harder and harder and harder because you can't afford to hire key people, but there are so many roles that you need to do as the founder. They just have to be done, and you're the one to do them because you can't afford to hire the person that you need to do it. And so it does get harder. It will be all consuming. And you do have to have a passion for the business. You have to have a passion for your product. And you can't let things you don't have a passion for fall to the wayside. If you like making things and you hate finance and you hate numbers, you don't close your books, you have no idea what your cash flow is. You don't know how your margins are performing. You don't know how a product order breakdown, if it's profitable or not. Like I know based on our margin reports that if an order comes in under $45, we have a 30% margin. If it's over $55, chances are I have about a 60% or a 60% margin. So working on pushing our AOV up so that we get a better margin has been huge. But I enjoy doing that. And if you own a business that you're making something and you don't enjoy that, you're going to be just kind of doing things blind. And so you can't shy away from the things that you don't like doing when you're trying to build a business.
Great advice. Is there anything that you would advise your former self if you could go back in time?
Depends on the day. Some days it would be don't do it, just stop. And then let's see, I'm sure probably I don't have any that comes off of my mind because I'm sure there's 100 things we would have done differently. I probably would have chose a different wax because the wax blend we use right now is super difficult. Essential oils are super difficult to work with. Wooden wicks are super difficult to work with, but that's really been our differentiator. And so, that pain in doing something that no one else is doing has allowed us to really really grow in our space. I guess another piece of advice is find your why. Why are you doing it? My most favorite book is Find Your Why by Simon Sinek. If anyone has ever, just go on YouTube, find his TED Talk of the Golden Circle. He tells you, people don't buy what you're selling. People buy what you are, why you're selling, not what you're selling. And so understanding your why, our why is we want to help people eliminate fragrance from their lives, and everything we do is centered around that. People get that mission. We're very mission oriented and driven, and that has really allowed us to grow and understand who our market is, who we're selling to, and really focus on that.
Eric, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.